Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On for 2023. Malcolm, you're back in the studio here tonight, and Happy New Year, mate.
Yeah, same to you, mate. Well, we had a good night Tuesday night, didn't we?
We did.
Yes, guests of 5AA at the cricket, and yes.
It's fantastic.
The food we put on, I never thought I'd hear the words of jealousy or at the cricket from my better half. It was an extraordinary line. I did tell Flipper that it made his 159 on debut appear Mickey Mouse to get those lines out of Emma, I can tell you.
Fair enough. Over the last couple of weeks, we've done our summer series because we've basically been on a little bit of a break, but it was great to relive some of those moments from Johnny Wynn and Rodney Maynard. So we thank them for their time earlier on in the year.
Very much so, yes. 2-8, great man. And it was good rocket to catch up not only on his career but about the state of country footy and country sport in general.
Absolutely, and that has progressed actually in the last couple of weeks, and we might cover that over the next couple of weeks when we start talking footy again.
Around the grounds.
Today, mate, we're going to sort of get underway a little bit different format today than what we have been doing because it has been a pretty big 2 weeks as far as sports go, especially here in South Australia. We're going to have a little bit of a look at the tennis later, but I think it's pretty important that we start off with the cricket first, mate. So Australia v South Africa, it was supposed to be the series that was going to test the Australians.
Yeah, look, South Africa's batting very disappointing. While it's hard for us to comment being Australians, you do have to wonder about the whole South African quota system, if it is their best possible side. You've also have Quentin de Kock, who's a gun, is retired, and you do wonder on that side of things, and he was critical of the quota system as being one of the reasons. So, disappointing, and their batting was pretty average. Look, their bowling was average. Norgay had a crack.
Yep.
Rabada was a bit disappointing. Jara, the left-hand orthodox spinner, I reckon he bowls about as well as you or me, so he was pretty average. Pretty disappointing, really. But Australia just did the job. Like they played very well against West Indies, against an average opposition. We all thought South Africa was going to be... And it looked that way in the first test, Batting was average, but, hey, we know this is a bowling deck, 3 for pretty quick, and then Travis really...
that put his foot down, didn't he?
Yeah, partnership with Head and Smith really probably effectively won the test match. And, if we'd had to chase even 100 in the second dig, it may have been more interesting. We think we were 4 for 30, but you do wonder on that. And then, the second test, Warner's innings, and that. But South Africa's batting was pretty disappointing again.
Their bowling is what they sort of prided themselves coming out here. And apart from probably a 20-minute spell each day, they were a little bit average. I totally agree with you there for sure.
As a South Australian, I will say Alex Carey's maiden Test 100 was huge. I mean, I'm a massive Carey fan. As a cricketer, I think he should have been playing Test cricket at least a year earlier. Personally, I think he's been our best wicketkeeper batsman for a long time, and his innings. Technically, you can argue that technically he's our best player.
Yes.
In terms of pure technique.
Yep. And it was good reward for effort. I mean, he'd sort of been around the mark and batting reasonably well, but to go through and obviously get his 100, especially on home soil, is quite special. And, again, South Australia featuring prominently with Head doing quite well and then Carey doing quite well, so you can't complain.
Oh, and then... I know we've got it down here, the player of the series with David Warner. That was farcical.
Yep.
How in the hell can you make 213 runs in 3 test matches, 200 of them in one innings, and get player of the series? It was just ridiculous. Oh. I thought it had to be... Travis Head, personally. Yes. I thought he had the most effect over the 3 Test series.
Well, he changed things.
Yeah.
You know,
so I thought he could have gone Cummins. You could have Cummins, Smith. There was a case there as well. Mm-hmm. There certainly wasn't a case for David Warner, and it was just when they announced it, everyone was just flabbergasted.
I agree. We're all arms up in air going, hang on, how did you come to that conclusion? Yes, the 200 was a defining innings for him personally, but it really didn't do too much to the series and to the team. It was probably, like you said before, Head changed that Test match, you know, when they were struggling a little bit and really got on top. Obviously, we're a little bit biased being South Australian, but you look at it as a whole, and I reckon he would certainly have to be there for one of the best players of the series.
It was just a crazy decision. It was almost a sympathy vote in his 100th Test match. He's come back, you know, but hang on, that for a 1 Test out of 3 where he's had no effect on the other. Look, if he'd gone and made 70 or 80 or 100 in Sydney, then he's got some sort of case. But failing again in Sydney, it's just ridiculous.
It was. So leading on to Sydney, obviously Usman Khawaja, he's 195 and they declare.
I thought it was a blatantly obvious declaration. I found it quite amusing, people carrying on. Look, the job is to try and win the game.
Yes.
They had to try and get 20 wickets to try and win the game. People saying afterwards, it was ridiculous that they were 8 wickets short. Well, hang on. They had quite a few umpires' calls decision going against them and dropped a few catches. Like, it could have... And the way South Africa batted in the first 2 Tests, it certainly wasn't out of the realms of possibility.
Exactly.
I thought we were 1 wicket short on the first day. I think if they'd gone to stumps at 7 for, it was well and truly game on. So, for mine, it was just a blatantly obvious declaration. It's an individual, it's a team game. You got to try and win a team game.
I was just about to say that really at the end of the day, most Australian teams have always put team before individual honours, and I think, you know, from a public point of view, they wanted to see the 200 for Uzi, but at the same time, you're right, it is all about winning the game, and they needed as much time to bowl them out with, considering all the rain that they've had in Sydney.
Yep, for mine, just an obvious declaration.
It is. Mate, the wickets, obviously, over the summer series, we talked about Brisbane, sort of getting a little bit of a strike there before Christmas. Any thoughts on the Melbourne and Sydney pitch?
Look, I thought Melbourne was okay. I thought there was a bit in it, bit of both. I thought Sydney was a bit bland. There wasn't quite enough in it. It showed, and it didn't spin. Admittedly, they were unlucky. The weather, they've lost 2 days now. If it had cracked and then it spun, and I think that's why Agar got picked. They thought it was going to be the old Sydney Bunsen burner, and it just wasn't. So, yeah.
Obviously, chasing those 14 wickets on the last day or day and a bit, they put themselves in reasonable position. There were a few half chances, but there are also some silly chances in there as well.
Oh, but a couple of those umpires called. There was one LBW given not out. It was hitting middle stump halfway up. How that got given not out has me blown. We actually made the point, the guy I was watching it with on Sunday at one stage, I said, they've got an umpire who's a not out umpire here in Paul Rifle. If it had been Blocker Wilson, it would have been Blocker's is an out umpire.
Yes.
So the batting team are then having to appeal. There were so many umpires. I think there was 5 umpires' calls. Well,
that probably leads me into my next point that we've got down on our run sheet is that, you know, those catches that are being reviewed and reviewed and reviewed, is it getting out of control?
It is ridiculous.
Yeah,
they were all out.
Yep.
All 3 were out. Anyone who's played cricket knows the hand was underneath. The 2D, 3D camera bit does not work for cricket.
Yep.
It is absolute stupidity. I know the old day it used to be fielder catch it, and off you go. And then a few people like Tiger Lance, the famous one where he's asked Ian Chappell, did you catch it? And then when Ian's walking off, he said, well, he didn't say how many times it bounced. So there's a few things like that. But every one of those, and especially the third one, was just flabbergasting. That's just an out. Good catch, Steve.
Yes.
See you later.
I think there has to be some sort of human element put back into the game, and I think we're relying a little bit too much on technology. That's why I ask, is it getting out of control?
With the way the cameras are, you can find doubt on any ball, basically.
Yep.
And it's just, it hasn't worked and can't work. Let's be honest. Let's actually umpire. Well, you might as well just have robots out there because all they're doing is counting to 6.
Well, I mean, it takes the umpire umpiring out of it, and I feel sorry for the umpires in the way that they're having to second guess all of their decisions. It's a little bit like the AFL umpiring, when it comes to goal line review and touched off of the boot. I just think it's gone a little too far.
Well, the old adage, accept the umpire's decision. Umpire's decision is the final thing we've all grown up with, and just
Absolutely,
yeah,
mate. Obviously, looking over the 6 tests here in Australia, the crowds just seem to be 5. Sorry, seem to be down quite considerably on previous years. Has Test cricket lost a little bit of its lustre?
Maybe, possibly, but the crowd's still in Adelaide, and Adelaide as a state with supporting sport. We all talk about Melbourne being the sporting capital of Australia and the world. On ratio of population, of the way we support South Australia. No, South Australia's actually, on pure ratio of population, we support sport a mile better than anywhere else.
Correct. And
that's not even a biased comment. That's just a fact.
When we talk about the tennis a little bit later on, I want to almost say exactly the same thing right here, right now, is a big pat on the back for South Australian fangoers that are actually going to these events and showing up in droves. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
40,000 on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Okay, that's become the big thing, and I think it's become a real family thing. Hey, well, New Year's Eve is a bit of an overrated thing, in my opinion.
Yep.
We'll go to the cricket. It's huge, but 21,000 again there on Tuesday night.
Well, we had the pleasure of being at the Adelaide Oval on Tuesday night, and we were guessing with the flip up in the box how many we thought, and I was around the 17 to 18 mark, and he said, "Oh no, I reckon there's at least 20." That's a great effort, especially considering with everything else that's going on at the moment. I mean, most people have gone back to work. Tennis has been on for the last 2 weeks here in Adelaide. You've got the Tour Downunder. It's just Adelaide's alive. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
All right, mate. We're going to move on. We're going to stick with cricket for a little bit longer. We're going to talk about the Strikers.
We're not going to talk about the game currently on.
Maybe we'll talk about that one first. Let's get the negatives out of the way before the positives. Currently over in Melbourne at the moment, bowled out for 108. Not exactly
the bizarre bit, and it's emerged. There's been a bit of debate on social media and that sort of thing about Travis Head and Alex Carey not playing. Well, after Uzi, Agar, Renshaw and that played last night, sort of on the travel bit, well, hang on, Agar played for the WA side last night.
Yes.
So why in the hell, we thought, oh, geez, come on, Travis and Alex, how many more days off do you want? But it sounds like Cricket Australia stopped it. Well, it's just a bizarre decision. You've got, surely those two players are draw cards, big draw cards,
correct,
for the game in Melbourne tonight. It's just just ridiculous.
Like you said, Labuschagne and Warner have played, Agar has played, and it's just like, hang on, why aren't Carey and Head playing? Considering it's in Melbourne,
It was
all right.
Khawaja, Labuschagne, Renshaw, and Agar all played last night. On the bit of no, we're not letting him play an away game on travel. Agar travelled. Mm-hmm. So just crazy.
That's one that I'm scratching my head at when you walked in tonight and said that Head and Carey are not playing. I'm like, what? Hang on, how does that work?
Work rate. Hang on, we've just played the game in Sydney where they've sat in their backsides with 2 days where it got washed out. It's just crazy.
Yes, unfortunately, money is ruling the game, so to speak. Maybe it's a corporate decision.
It just doesn't make sense in any way. Now, if the players had made the call that they needed the time off, I'd disagree with that as well. But at least you'd go, well, at least that's it. But at the moment, if that is correct, and we need to get it confirmed, that if that's correct, that Cricket Australia have made the call, that is just unbelievable.
That is
as KG would say, strike me pink.
Big time. All right, mate. We'll get on to a bit more positive with the Strikers. The record run chase here a week ago now of 230. What an exciting game. You were at that game.
Yeah.
I came home from playing a bit of bowls, crazily enough, on that day and had it on in the background. I just couldn't turn it off.
Well, it's quite funny that we were sitting there and that we were mucking around. Come on, keep them to 210 to keep us in it. It's a joke line. Mm-hmm. And then when we're batting and we kept going, I was like, hey, geez, I wish they had only made 210 at the moment.
Yep.
And in the end, they've got 230 and got them with 3 balls to spare.
Yes.
Which technically in 2020 may well have been another 10, 12 runs, even more.
Absolutely. Well, the Hurricanes sort of imploded a little bit towards the end there. They, a couple of no balls, wides, that waist height no ball that was a catch was very interesting.
Look, I thought it was a blatant no ball. And look, I disagree also with the way the ruling's done. Because it wasn't called on ground,
yes,
the run doesn't count to the batsman. The batsman who, in this case it was Hose, goes back and faces. Well, really, it should be 1 run. He's been caught on the boundary and Short should have been on strike.
Yes.
Okay, Hose has hit the next ball for 6.
Yeah, he certainly did.
Afterwards say, oh, great. But if it's called on ground, which it was in the last over, that run counts. So I just think, well, hang on, you've been caught on the boundary.
Yes.
That's a normal run. You score off a no ball. So why are we deciding it's a no ball, but you don't score in that situation? I think it's a bit
I
crazy.
Think just because of the way that the game was going, I think everybody just sort of lost their head a little bit. I mean, it certainly looked like that way.
That is the rule.
Yes.
And because I admit, I did go and ask Peter Siddle after the game.
Yep.
And because I was saying, well, that just doesn't make sense. And he thinks, I actually reckon it's not bad, but we agree to differ in the end, which is fine.
Fair enough, absolutely. Mate, Rashid Khan and Linny obviously playing one more match here tonight, I believe, or one more back in Adelaide. But being replaced with Head and Carey, is it a bit of a win-win? Possibly.
I don't really get it that I would have hoped you'd commit to a tournament. Okay, the overseas player, while I disagree with that, I can understand a little bit more, but surely Lynn, in this case, you commit to the side. And I'm sorry, I admit I watched highlights from one of the games from South Africa today, and standard-wise, mate, you and I can get on the plane and go over there now. It wasn't great.
Oh, if it means a few extra dollars, I'm in, mate. Let's go. I think Head and Carey coming back in is a good thing. Obviously, we would have loved to see them play tonight, but wow, you're right. Rashid, obviously for national duties, obviously national, but ahead of anything else. But yeah, you're right. The level of competition in some of these alternative leagues just scratches your head sometimes.
Right. Yeah, I think once you commit, don't you commit for a season, sort of? And look, it's yet another reason to shorten the Big Bash, which finally is happening next year.
Yep.
Shorten it so you do have people more for the season. Now, the Big Bash goes longer than an episode of Blue Hills from the old days for people out there. I just think it goes ridiculously long, too many games, so shortening it does help.
Yep. Peter Siddle playing tonight, which is a little bit of a surprise, but they're going to need him to be fighting fit and bowling pretty well on this Melbourne pitch. Is he going to be fit for the finals, or is he going to break down again?
Oh, look, wait and see. It's funny because he's had a good Shield season so far, and he bowled very well. He got man of the match Shield game here. Okay, it was only against South Australia. But he was very good. Mm-hmm. And so out of that, he didn't look like he was losing his zip, which he has looked like so far in the Big Bash. So it's a bit... I'm a bit mixed on that.
Yep, well, we'll wait and see, obviously. We'll see how it all pans out tonight. Obviously, only bowling at a target of 108. We're going to need another one of those record all out for 15 or 20 again for it to come together.
Very disappointing tonight.
All right, mate, we're going to take a quick break. We've covered quite a lot of cricket in our first little stanza. We're going to head over to the tennis after the break, mate.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
So the tennis, it's been a couple of, we're in the middle of a big fortnight here in Adelaide. But go for it. The Adelaide International week, mate.
Absolutely. The tennis has come back to Adelaide in a pretty big way. We sort of missed out for a few years there and sort of lost status for a little bit. They did try a C tournament, which was bringing in some of the legends of the game and a couple of the up-and-comers. And that event worked very, very well. But it's great to see them getting status back. And with the Hopman Cup obviously going overseas and then the introduction of the United Cup, it's meant that there's a couple of weeks there that Adelaide has taken full advantage of. I was actually quite surprised to see it run for 2 weeks, not just the one, but I think they've split it up very, very well with the ATP 250 event and the WTA 500 event.
Yeah, look, it seems to be working. It's certainly, you had last week with,
Novak Djokovic, yes, headlining.
So we had the big name here. Mixed thoughts on that one personally.
Yep.
More than mixed. But it's been a pretty good fields. Australians showing a bit of promise.
Absolutely.
Kokonakis again today. So,
yes.
yeah.
Currently, we'll talk about the Adelaide International 2 in a minute, but he's currently 5-all in the second set after taking the first set 6-3 as we speak.
Okay.
So, sort of things are trending quite well there. But he beat Rublev in his last round game, the number one seed. Obviously, great to see a South Australian do well, but, geez, they always perform well here in Adelaide, don't they?
Yeah, and it's a big week for him too because he won last year, so
he's got
defending
points.
those points.
Correct. So. We'll go back to Djokovic in the first week there. Perfect preparation with a couple of little hiccups, a little bit of a hammy strain.
Yeah.
But I thought Korda really took it to him in that final. Young up-and-coming player, and from all reports, he rips the ball just that little bit more, and that bounce that he's getting, Novak was just struggling with.
No, he's certainly got a fair bit of promise, Korda. There's no doubt about that. And, we just wait and see. He's played... So he trained again today, Djokovic, with the hammy really taped up and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how that goes because you've really only got to do a little bit more to it, and that's probably it.
And it's a long 2 weeks, and you're playing 5 sets versus 3 sets, obviously, in the ATP circuit events. Grand Slams, you're in for 5 all the way. So...
And, okay, he'll get the night games in general, so he's not quite as much heat, but hammy can go again. Yeah.
So then you've got
fibre.
So your headline acts, obviously, we'll talk about the Australian Open a little bit more in a minute, but, Novak Djokovic, Kyrgios, Nadal, for the men anyway, they're all under injury clouds.
Well, yeah, let's be honest, Kyrgios is always under an injury cloud. Brain cloud as well.
It was talking about Kyrgios, it was a pity to see him pull out of the Adelaide event. Obviously, a draw card here in Adelaide would have been fantastic to see him come. But we talked about it in the cricket a little bit earlier. We have to pat the back of the Adelaide sporting public. I mean, they are turning up in droves at Memorial Drive, and we were at the Adelaide Oval on Tuesday night for the cricket, and we happened to go in past the tennis centre, and the tennis centre is looking fantastic. They've done a really good job with that.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't normally go in that gate. It was the first time I'd actually been around that side for a while.
Well,
so
I hadn't been there in a couple of years because of the pandemic, and same deal. I'm always sort of coming in the other end. Hadn't been around that side since they had finished it. And the additions that they've put in the last couple of years are just absolutely fantastic. And you can see that the tournament's just going from strength to strength.
Oh, mate, no, I didn't walk out that way after the most significant sporting event in 2022 with the Legs Premiership. I did go out the other way, but I think I would have walked over the top at that stage anyway, so I wouldn't have noticed it.
I think there would have been coals down, mate. You would have been able to walk over that one as well. All right, mate, we go into the Australian Open preview. We've just talked about Djokovic, Nadal and Kyrgios obviously being some bigger names. With the tournaments being played at this time of year and not having a lot of rest time from the end of last year, do you think that the Australian Open needs to just adjust the schedule a little bit to just give them a few more weeks off?
I think it's actually gone back a little bit later than what it
just
used
a touch.
to be. So there's that as well, because they're not having to spend Christmas over because there was a bit of debate there for a while. Mm-hmm. So you still want to get it. If you go any further back and you get out of the school holidays, I think that then does make it harder. So I don't really...
Yeah, I mean, if the first week is in the school holidays, that's when you're getting the bulk of your crowds at Melbourne Park. Obviously, the lead-up events would still be in the bulk of school holidays all the way around Australia. United Cup, the Adelaide International, Auckland is currently being played at the moment. Hobart usually does something as well. You've got exhibition in Melbourne as well. So
probably the other point, though, is if the players weren't coming... And they were saying, no, we're not going, it's too close to Christmas, etc. Well, then you go, hey, hang on, we do have to go further back. But I think if they're coming, so be it.
Look, I'm of two minds. I think that it can be slightly adjusted. I think it has been, but, the talk obviously around the town and all over the media at the moment is, players like Osaka obviously missing for pregnancy, which we found out obviously today.
Yeah.
Venus Williams, who was given a wild card, had to give that up. But then there's a real host of new players coming through that I think we should be excited for.
Yeah, and I think...
And the Australian Open has been renowned for... Discovering some of those and considering that the points that are on offer as well as the time of year it's played, you can have somebody jump out of the box. I mean, look at Alcaraz... this time last year, ranked basically around 100 or just outside the 100. By the end of the year, he's number one.
Yeah, he was a kabang, wow, sort of thing.
Absolutely. So, yes, the Australian Open obviously being played at Melbourne Park from the 16th to the 29th of January. Obviously, it's going to be on Channel 9, early matches. It's going to be interesting to see some of those upsets that are going to come from that. But, it's always nice sitting back late at night. You've got cricket on one channel, tennis on the other. And from a sporting point of view, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, mate, that finishes our tennis for tonight. At this stage, we'd have a past player, but obviously with us coming back to our first show for the new year, we've arranged for a past player, past legend for next week. So we'll head over to the happy days.
Go for it.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Happy days.
And, mate, to kick off today's happy days, I thought you might like this one. Happy birthday to Tom Jonas.
Yeah, look, a fantastic story, Tom, that playing at Ross Trevor, Bass gets him out to Nord, and away he goes. Bit of a story there too. I will thank his dad. John did buy a copy of my book, the Definitive Rulebook, to give to Tom for Christmas, just as a reminder where his real roots are with the Nord stories in it, so stirring him up. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
Obviously, a product of Ross Trevor College, which a lot of Nord footballers have come from, but obviously playing for the mighty Redlegs for a few years there, and then obviously getting drafted to Port Adelaide in 2010, obviously playing 2011 4 games, thereabouts.
Yeah. Look, and just goer, he was an on-baller more at Nord and tagged a bit, and then he's ended up playing a key defender. It was a little bit short. He was always leadership. There was always leadership right from day dot when he arrived at Nord. So, and on the Ross Trevor angle, don't worry. I do hear from the boys in terms of Panos and Kennelly that they do remind how many Rocks boys are around, and Jarvis, how many played in the side. Yes, yep. I did hear that from a few of them.
203 games for Port Adelaide, obviously captain. Fantastic achievement for Tom Jonas. So happy birthday, mate.
Yes.
All right, mate, we move on. This week in boxing, Muhammad Ali, I'm sure every one of our listeners has heard of Muhammad Ali, was drafted at Louisville, Kentucky, but didn't want to go and was refused by the draft board an exemption.
Oh, look, an extraordinary story. There's so many, we could go with so many angles on Muhammad Ali. Look,
yep.
I will say, being at the G on 98 Grand Final day, the AFL Grand Final, and sort of like going, right, I want to enjoy this pre-match bit. And Muhammad Ali comes out, and it was goosebumps. A standing ovation of 100,000 people. It was incredible. It was a privilege to be there.
The respect that's shown for a man, or the GOAT really of boxing, is second to none.
He's up there with Bradman, Phelps. There's a few, Jesse Owens. Jordan. He's up there.
Yeah.
He's up there.
We move on. We'll stick with the tennis theme, which we've already been talking about a little bit earlier, but we'll throw back to yesteryear there. Borg and Gerolaitis play off in the ATP Masters final, with Borg winning 6-2, 6-2 in the first of his 2 ATP Tour Master final wins.
At Madison Square Gardens.
In New York.
Okay, Madison out there listening as well. Borg, we've just talked about Muhammad Ali in that way. Borg was one of the all-time greats as well. And Vitas Gerolaitis was a bloody good player as well. Mm-hmm. So, couple of greats.
Look, they were the ones that really kick-started ATP Tour tennis and really took it from a semi-professional sport to a professional sport. And, watching some of Borg's Wimbledon finals, just so smooth and graceful. And, geez, you'd love to have been in New York City at Madison Square Gardens to see that final.
Oh, and Borg was also he was a gun in the crunch situation. I'd like to have his 5-set record in front of us. I reckon he was pretty reasonable in that way.
Absolutely. And I actually watched his movie. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But, you know, he had his troubles as a bit of a junior and got pulled into line and obviously played the Davis Cup at such a young age. And, wow, definitely up there with the GOATs of tennis as well.
Yep.
All right, mate, we move on. We'll circle back to cricket, mate. And a name that doesn't need too much repeating, Don Bradman. Second innings century against Queensland.
After scoring
a ton in the first. Yep.
We could probably grab Bradman probably about 20 games to do that. So, yeah. Just, we could almost just press repeat, see you again next week, Don, in that way. So
absolutely, and especially during cricket season.
Yes.
His name keeps coming up in the research that I keep doing.
Yes.
And, mate, I thought we'd finish off with some baseball. This one's a little bit close to my heart.
Yes.
But back in 1920, I was not even a twinkle in anybody's eye that time. But a name that most people would probably know, but Babe Ruth. Boston decided to trade Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees in January 1920.
Extraordinary. And you think 125,000 cash.
Yeah.
And the 350,000 loan was huge money back then.
That's massive money back then.
Just huge. That's in the millions nowadays.
Correct.
And it did. It was one of the biggest superstitions. The curse of the Bambino.
It's one of those ones that just would never go away, and the amount of times that Boston lost in a 7-game series was just ridiculous. Back then, $125,000 cash. I mean, it's
huge.
That's huge.
Massive.
That is. And the story behind that is that, you know, Babe Ruth had been a little bit, how can we put it? He was a little bit naughty on a few occasions when they were travelling, and he'd stay out a little bit longer than he was supposed to. Had some issues with the team manager, and they thought that they were getting the better end of the deal by trading him, and he went on to being an absolute superstar for New York, and Boston had the curse of the Bambino put upon them, and it took them 84 years to crack it.
Yeah, hard one too. Like, obviously, it's just a bit of myth and all that. We're not really sure, but you can't really have a crack at anyone for club for trying to bring discipline in and all that. But
no, and they thought
backfire.
Yeah, they thought they were doing the right thing at that time, but hey, it didn't quite work out. But 84 years later, they certainly broke that in a pretty royal way against New York. So
yeah,
there you go. All right, mate, we'll scoot into the extra time big finish.
Extra time, big finish.
All right, mate, we're going to kick off with the AFL. Just briefly, teams are back on the track for the new year.
Yes, the old cliche lines are out. We've never been fitter. Skin folds are the best. Training the best we've ever had.
Training the house down.
Yeah, we've all heard it before. Let's just wait and see. But
yep.
Look, I do on terms of Port Adelaide. I am a big Horn Francis fan. I think the criticism of him has been way over the top. I think if you get him and Rosie and Butters together, that the potential of that's extraordinary.
Yep.
I think they'll rebound. Adelaide, I'm still not 100% sure of. Yes, getting Rankin in gives them a bit more pizzazz, and there is promise in the forward line, but I think there's still too many honest battlers. Your Murphy, Keys.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see Port Adelaide finishing?
I think Port will make the 8.
Yep, top 4 maybe.
Maybe.
Things would have to really go right for them.
Yeah, and Adelaide, I think Adelaide might improve, but I'd still think 10 to 14 personally.
Yep. I'd be Port Adelaide, sorry. We'll start off with Port Adelaide. I'm in the same boat as you. Great to see Horn Francis on the track this week. Fantasia back on the track this week as well for the first time this year, for the first time in this pre-season after having a couple of little surgeries at the end of last year for both of those players. Yeah, I think it is exciting for Port Adelaide. You do see Butters, Rosie, Dersma, and then you throw Orazio into that, and then you also throw Jason Horne-Francis. Exciting times for Port Adelaide.
Oh, look, Fantasia, we all know he can play like crazy. It's just his body.
Yep. And Adelaide, I'd say Adelaide, you're right. I think they're going to improve. I think the Rankin into the middle a little bit more, maybe swapping with Rochelle in there as well.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I think that is. I still think there's a lack of class in the midfield. There's a lack of big bodies few too many honest battlers and probably a little bit short in defence. And I admit, rucking-wise, O'Brien and Strawn, not convinced on either. I'd go with Strawn.
Mm-hmm.
O'Brien, tries hard, but he's just not up to it personally.
Rory Sloane comes back after injury. What impact do you see him having, or where do you see him playing, potentially?
Look, it's a hard one because he was struggling towards the end. I don't think he should be captain. I don't think he's an automatic selection anymore. Look, hopefully, whether they try and play him as the defensive forward, do they do that? Do they play him out at back, half back? I'm just not sure what they'll do with him.
I think it's a sort of a three-way rotation. You almost have him rotating through the middle, rotating through half back, and rotating through half forward.
Just not sure if you can have Keys and Sloane on the ball together.
No.
And Berry, all similar.
Yep.
Try hard.
Keys burns it a little bit. Sloaney, after coming back from injury, not 100% sure how that's going to pan out. Who do you see being Adelaide's next captain?
Dawson or Dodo.
Dodo, yep. Yeah. I'm of the same. I probably think Dodo first before Dawson, but I think...
Always a hard one. I think that's probably a comment more of the internally where you get a bit more...
Yeah, who's a bit more leadership material. Down back, obviously, Adelaide are missing probably a tall defender.
Yep.
Getting rid of I'm trying to think of his name now. To Western Bulldogs.
Keith.
Yes. Getting rid of Keith to the Bulldogs. Was that a good move or a bad move in hindsight?
Well, the whole bit of, we don't think we're going to contend in the next 3 or 4. It's rebuild, but you're still looking at them going now, well, hang on, Jordan Butts has showed a bit and Worrell showed a bit, but, him and Greenwood were both pretty controversial admissions.
Yep.
So, hey, cycling, big time.
Yeah, the Tour Down Under comes back to Adelaide for the first time, obviously, for a couple of years because of pandemic. Yeah, what a world-class event we're seeing back on our shores again.
It's huge. It's also interesting that you'd think that a lot of Europeans wouldn't want to come out with the heat and that, but it doesn't really seem to keep anyone away. And it
seems to be the hotter it gets, the more they love it.
And it's traditional that it'll be hot.
Yes.
Rains on Anzac Day and the heat for the Tour Down Under. So
tick it off in the calendar. The tour's obviously taken on, again, world status for the women's riders this time round, which is a huge coup, really.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's elite in that way that you're getting such effectively two big events.
It's an event that, when it first came along, you were a little unsure, the Adelaide 500 closes down a few roads, then the Tour Down Under closes down a few, and you're like, hang on, what are we doing here? But it's just grown from strength to strength, and the tourism that is being shown through the Barossa, through the McLaren Vale, through the city is just, it's priceless, really.
Oh, and it shows how big that is that so many places bid for it.
Mm-hmm.
The parade's big next week. The whole parade, I understand, is being closed off.
Yep.
And that.
I think they start from there and head up the Wollonga Hill, which is just huge.
Yeah. No, I'll go out for the start.
Absolutely. And again, the South Australian public will turn up to this event. Yes, it's a free event, but they love it. Absolutely love it.
It's huge.
It's fantastic. All right, mate, we move on to basketball. The 36ers, once again, up, down, up, down, up, down. Will they make finals?
No, just too inconsistent. Actually, they're playing tonight too.
Yep.
So
we'll check that score up as we go along. But, I think the 36ers, I think they've got all the ingredients to be a really good team. They just can't quite consistently put it together. 1 minute they're blitzing teams, the next minute they're having to come from behind, and then occasionally just falling short as well. So, I think if they get there, they might do okay. It's just a matter of getting to that point, and at the moment, it just doesn't look like they're being as consistent as they should be.
And they're in trouble tonight as we speak. 79-68, 5 minutes to go. So they're in big trouble tonight.
That could be very close to costing them a finals berth. I know they're hanging on for dear life in 6th spot as we speak as well. So that'll be very, very interesting.
Also on the weekend, we haven't got it on the disappointing result also in the soccer for Adelaide United on the weekend.
Yes.
Losing 4-0 away.
Yep.
So, a bit inconsistent there as well.
Well, since the World Cup's come back, they've just been a little bit off the pace. They had built some pretty good momentum going into the World Cup break, but since coming back, they've just not quite been around the mark. And yes, some of those, ricochets and own goals, you beat your head against a brick wall going, I can't believe it, but it is what it is, and 4-0 is not exactly the result you want to be having.
It wasn't a cliffhanger.
And very, very rightly got into his press conference and said, nothing to talk about here, let's talk about next week.
Yeah, he doesn't muck around, Carl. He's entertaining in that way. Yeah. And now, let's moving on. Baseball, Adelaide Giants.
Absolutely. We're getting to the pointy end of the season. I had the privilege... We've visited a bit of sport over the last couple of weeks that we've had holidays. I went down to West Beach there a couple of weeks ago and seen the Adelaide Giants, unfortunately, lose an opening game to the Perth Heat, which they're coming, mate. They were 7 or 8 games behind a few weeks ago. They're now down to 2, and the next lot of games are going to really determine where they finish and where they play finals. Obviously, you want to have a home final to start it off. 2 divisions, they switch them over, 1v2, 2v1 in the opposite.
Yeah, it's quite complicated.
In the opposite group. Gee, they want to probably put one away here in the next 2 games to secure that home final.
Big time. Vital.
And they've been a bit up and down as well. They had that run of 12 in a row where they did break the record, and then all of a sudden, since then, they've just been scratching a little bit with a few new players. Just trying to get them cherry ripe for finals. So we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully we can visit a finals game.
Definitely.
All right, mate. That concludes our first episode for 2023. Mate, we've done pretty well. We're not having a special guest tonight. We've covered a lot of topics that we needed to cover, obviously, because of the last 2 weeks with all the cricket and the tennis and everything else that's been going on. But we're looking forward to a big 2023.
We'll go through next week on the lady side of things with the Reds, with the soccer,
yes,
and with the Lightning. We'll get stuck into that as well.
Until then, we promise to do better, mate.
Yep, we'll have a crack.
We'll see you next week.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.